Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to be covering about the error 500 of Elementor. So if I click on theme builder and click edit, it's just like it cannot edit any template in Elementor, even in the front end as well. Like it works fine in front end, but if I click edit with Elementor, it's just not letting me to edit the blocks, and error 500 straightly pops to my window. Now, Elementor has a good troubleshooting guide for you, but the reason why I come up with this tutorial because I just want to break down with you the approach when you're following this tutorial. Like this one works well, but there's a different ways for you to do the troubleshooting. What I'm saying is, for example, like they've break down the 3 possibilities of the issue, which is not enough memory allocated to your website first, and you have different ways for you to increase your memory limit. You can use the HTA axis, you can use the WP config, you can use the PHP manager, but which is which one works and why this one works for you, okay? Third-party plugins issue, which usually the common troubleshooting, and I don't really recommend to do that into the live website. So when you are debugging things, make sure that you have a staging version and then you do the debugging there. Now, other area as well that they are saying is related to your PHP file. Maybe the permission is not right, or really the version of your PHP or something. Okay, so let's break down first with third-party plugin issue. You can go into your WordPress website, go to the plugins, and disable all the plugins except the Elementor or Elementor Pro if you are using Pro. Now, if it is disabled, but still you're getting a 500 error, then the plugins is not the problem. Then you can proceed to the second possible cause, which is probably your memory limit is not enough. They recommend you to have at least 515 MB for the memory limit. Now, there's a different ways for you to increase the memory limit in WordPress. There is a HTA access option, there's a WP config option. If you're using Nginx or VPS, there's also a different way for you to, it's also better to increase it there instead of in the WP config or HTA access. Or there is also a what do you call that, like increase it in the PHP manager straightly, okay, or PHP.NE. So for example, you want to do the WP config option. You log into your hosting provider, you go to your file manager, you go to the public, and you look for your WP config. And by the way, how my WordPress is set up is a bit different because I am using what do you call that? I'm using Bedrock structure. So you go into the WP config, and then you define your limit. So let's say define memory limit 215.16, and the max would be memory limit 512, or you can make that 512 or 715 if you want it to be like more of it. But you cannot overwrite. The WP config has a less or limit power compared to other settings. So for example, you cannot overwrite the value by PHP manager. So still, if your host put that the memory limit of your PHP server is only 200, then even though you put in the WP config the 512, then still this will not read, or this will be ignored. Okay, now let's say you do that and then you save it and then you refresh, still doesn't work. Oh, I don't know why it's working. Okay, so that one works. Let's see. Yeah, it's unstable. Still unstable. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's unstable. Still, we're still not good in that. Okay, again, WP config is just for a WordPress core directive. So it only apply, like if you're getting error specifically for a WordPress core, then better to put it in WP config. But Elementor is a plugin, so you need higher access than WP config. That's why I said like, whoa, why it was working when I put the WP config, because I know this won't not work. This is not enough, because the error, the problem we're trying to troubleshoot is the Elementor plugin, not the WordPress core. Okay, so still having a problem. I'm gonna crash this. It doesn't work. And then the other as well is you can use a HTA access. HTA access has more power than the WP config, but this is just specifically for Apache web server. If your website is probably using Nginx or you're using a Cloudflare which has a hybrid custom web server. I believe they're using Nginx with a twist of PHP GCI. So let's say, what do you call that? Let me just jump in here. So for you to know if you're using Apache, if HTA access works for you, you click the right click, you right click the page, you go into the network, and then you reload it. And then you scroll down, and then you click the headers, response header, but then the server is using Nginx. So I don't think this one will work. So you see what I'm getting? Like, you can follow this instruction, but it's still, you're just following instruction and wishing, oh, hopefully this would work, something like that. But I know, like, this type of troubleshooting that I'm giving to you, I know that this one wouldn't work because I know what's it serve or something like that. Hope it makes sense. So again, in the HTA access, let's say you're going to do this approach, but this website is using Nginx web server. So I would expect it wouldn't gonna work, but still, let's just pretend this website is using Apache. You can put the memory limit into your HTA access by putting in here. So mode.php, memory limit 512, and this one, execution. You can also disregard the execution for that. So I'm gonna click save. And by the way, you need to be careful in this one. If your website doesn't support, doesn't support this authorization headers, then in most cases, you're gonna get a 500 error into your website. But the reason why I'm not getting 500 error, because although when we inspect the elements and we get, we see the headers as an Nginx, SiteGround is still using Apache in the backend. So it's still acceptable. But if your web server is purely not using Apache and you put that into your HTA access, then expected to get a internal error, okay? Now this one wouldn't work, still have an issue. But actually, since this is Apache, let's just see, 512, let's make it 5 upload. Let's make that 715. Because this is accessing or editing the HTA access is not limited just to the, to the WordPress core. You are editing the directive of the PHP directive. So it will still apply to the plugin. So let's click the edit with builder, Elementor, but still we're having a problem. Okay, but putting this one into your HTA access itself, we're going to actually fix the error, unless if there's still other problem causing it. Okay, so I'm going to remove that. Still doesn't work. Third approach is we need to update the PHP manager. That's the higher variables, higher settings that we can update to our PHP, and that is usually located into the PHP manager. Usually you have that into your hosting. If you use a hosting, oops, that's not the right one. So there. So you look for Control K, PHP manager, and go to the PHP variables. And we'll look for the PHP limits. Memory. So memory limit is fine. Like we're using 768, but still, for this one, you cannot edit it. For some reason, it's uneditable. So you can use if it's uneditable, you cannot edit it. You can use the HTA access approach. But then still, even though we put in, like, this still has a higher value than the HTA access, and Elementor only need 512, but still, we're getting a problem, okay? Now we proceed to the other problem. We already tried this too, but error still exists. But in some cases, if you don't have a very complex setup, changing the memory limit will already fix the problem. So when you are changing the memory limit, do not put it in functions.php. Do not put it into the WP config. Instead, put it into your HTA access. But if you have an option to edit the value of your PHP variables into the PHP manager, then edit the PHP manager instead of putting it into the HTA access. Hope that makes sense. Okay, now we've already done this, but still we're getting a 500 error. So another cause that they're saying about fatal errors is the website PHP file. What we can try to do as well is you Control K, that is just purely for SiteGround, but go to your file manager and then try to go to your plugins. And by the way, just disregard the structure, but make sure that the plugins of Elementor, this one, Elementor, where is Elementor? So Elementor should be 755. Currently it's 755, so we want to try to make it 775. Same with this, 775. Okay, now we're going to try to refresh it, but still we're getting an error. So we've already done the file manager thing, but still we're getting an error. You can try to sometimes as well if you're using cache. So every time you make some changes, if you're using a cache, you clear your cache to double confirm if it's really, if you still need to go in with a different troubleshooting approach, okay? Now we already changed the permission, but still we're getting the problem. We're gonna go into our PHP because this is still related to PHP. You go into the PHP manager, and then what it's actually right now, I set up as an ultra. I really like the ultra fast of SiteGround. It makes our website 30% faster. I can say that's really true. So if you are using SiteGround, better to open for the ultra fast PHP if you want to have a faster website. So we're gonna try to change the version to 4.3, and we'll try to, again, we go back to the site and refresh it, and we click edit with builder. Still we're getting a problem. So I would assume that the problem is the ultra fast PHP. So I'm going to put it back to a standard PHP access. Probably I need to contact Elementor on this. If they have, actually we're using an old version of Elementor, so we need a new patch. So I'm going to use the standard PHP, and we're just going to use the very updated version. Actually 8.3 is the safest one, but let's just jump into 8.4 and I'll refresh the page and click on the edit with Elementor. And I would expect it would fix the problem. So that's how you troubleshoot it. Other way around as well, if you already tried all the resources, is you define the debug mode into your WP config, and then you should be able to see the debug.log. Like this is php.log, but you can see a debug.log to see what's really triggering the error 500.